As much as I love men and I like working with men, I don't think they like working with me all that much. Men don't know what to do with women, and men don't know what to do with women like us.
Welcome to the Design of Business,
the business of design,
where we introduce you to people from all over the world from different industries and disciplines
who are here to talk about design, business, civility, and the values that govern how we work and live together.
This season, we are observing equity.
I'm Jessica Helfand.
And I'm Ellen McGirt. This episode of the Design of Business, the business of design, is powered by Deloitte's DEI Institute. Deloitte believes that bold actions can help drive equitable outcomes, and conversations like this can fuel the change needed to continue to build a more equitable society. Visit Deloitte's DEI Institute site at deloitte.com/US/DEI Institute for more of their research and perspectives on equity. Jessica, how are you? Oh, I cannot believe it. I'm so happy to be back with you.
As am I.
Do you believe that this is the first episode of the 11th season of the DBBD podcast? I cannot.
I cannot believe it. This season is special for so many reasons. For one, we get to be side by side again, co-hosting every episode. So listeners, be prepared. Brace for impact. And more importantly, two, this season is focused on something very special, highlighting what, Ellen, you have called, and wisely, the redesigners. Tell us something about what this is and why you came up with this beautiful word to describe what we're doing.
Thank you so much for asking, since I do talk about it a lot. And now we all do. Basically, one of the things that people like to talk about when we discuss issues of inequity in society, in the workforce, and all the systems that touch our lives is that these systems are functioning as they were designed. That if Black women are dying in childbirth in numbers greater than their white counterparts, if Latina women are paid less than everyone else, the education system is failing kids of color, creditworthy Black homeowners, all the things, right? All these systems that are in play are working as they were designed. Now, it gets complicated. The specifics aren't easy to find. It's rooted in the past and maybe largely invisible, but it's ultimately a design problem. And that's why I brought it to you and I brought it to us. So if you agree with this premise, and I do, then it seems to us that the only way to address these huge, ugly, systemic problems is by tackling it as a redesign brief. And that also means that everybody gets to bring their wisdom, their expertise, their training, their soul, their perspective, their vote to the table as redesigners. And that means everybody has a role to play. We started down this path with Design Observer 20, our now annual list of the people and ideas changing the world for good. And that was 2023. And if you head over to designobserver.com, you can see that list. And I'll tell you, that package was by far the most successful and popular content that we posted in a number of years. So it felt like we were on the right track.
We are onto something, and you in particular are onto something here. I think for a long time now, design has been co-opted by, owned by, I think appropriated by everyone. Why shouldn't redesign be, I think, in the same way? And an even more trenchant observation, which you have brought to Design Observer, is the degree to which we are all redesigning something. Why not do it in a way that is commensurate with a more productive, proactive, promising future for everyone? And here's where I want to say that one of the best things about the redesign package and this year, and you coming on as our editor-in-chief, is maybe for longtime listeners and longtime readers, a little bit less focus on design as it was and more focus on the observer part, which is, of course, intrinsically visual, but also deeply human. Our first redesigner is an icon who has been redesigning what she calls the field for over 40 years. For her, the field includes many things: photography, dance, film, art, sculpture. I'm talking about the incomparable and deeply multidisciplinary artist, Carrie Mae Weems.
Deeply multidisciplinary. Carrie Mae Weems needs very little introduction, but for anybody who needs a bit of a primer, here we go. Carrie started her artistic career in the 1970s as a dancer, studying under modern dance legend Anna Halprin when she was just 17 years old. When she was 20, her then boyfriend gave her a camera as a birthday gift, and what a gift to the whole world that was. She describes it as her tool to see the world. Weems exhibited her first collection of photographs, Family Pictures and Stories, in 1983, exploring the migration of Black families from the American South to the North, thus marking the public's introduction to one of the most prolific artists of our times. Her body of work stretches over 4 decades and across many mediums, but with a singular focus depicting the reality of Black life.
And just thinking of her body of work, this immense, comprehensive, really kaleidoscopic perspective on so many things. Why do you think, Ellen, she's such a perfect fit to kickstart this season of The Redesigners?
Well, you said it so perfectly in our intro, Jessica. She has become one of the world's greatest observers, and that she was observing a portion of life that was misunderstood, misrepresented, often willfully and by design misrepresented by popular industry and entertainment. The Black family, Black women, Black life. It seemed like a perfect time to not only enjoy what she has learned of over 40 years of being an artist, which is a difficult job under the best of circumstances, but what she's learned about observing the unobserved.
We recorded this interview several months back, Ellen, right after you were here in Providence attending a convening here at Brown called the Varying Shades of Brown Conference, where Carrie Mae Weems was finishing up her semester as the inaugural Agnes Gund Professor of the Practice of Arts and Social Justice. So here's what makes this really a global moment of miraculous coordinates coming together all at the same time. I live in Providence. I'm not in Providence. You're in Providence. Carrie Mae Weems is in Providence. I am in France, where my partner has COVID. And so we are, if you have to have COVID, you should be stuck in the south of France, where it's beautiful. And there happens to be, wait for it, a Carrie Mae Weems show in France, 30 minutes from where we're staying in Arles. And so I get to see the identical exhibition that you are seeing here in Providence, so that when it all came together and all three of us are in different parts of the world having this conversation, you and I had both seen the show the same week in different parts of the world.
Varying shades of connection. I love
Varying shades of COVID.
It's incredible knowing you're across the ocean having the same experience, particularly the cyclorama. That really left an impression on me. And we get into it a little bit with Carrie, and we talk about it after the episode as well.
Tell us and our listeners a little bit about how this experience was for you.
Carrie Mae Weems is known for her convenings. This is the first one I've been lucky enough to attend. And it is a cross between the best dinner party that you've ever wished you could be invited to. It's like she's opening up her family album and just friends from decades are just showing up, and there's music. Everyone in the audience is a member of the convening. So you just joy and music and potential and I'm amazed at the people who came who are from the community, who clearly felt like this spoke to them, and all of the people who flew in from around the world to participate. It felt like I was in a womb, a world that she created just for us. And I'll tell you, Jessica, I know that you know this about me. I go to a lot of convenings, as a person who, I only eat conference food certain months of the year. Like that's what the job is of a journalist. I wish I had the capacity to throw something a third, a quarter, a fraction as wonderful as what this was. And I'm just so grateful to everybody who was able to pull it together. And she is, of course, a spectacular figure. And she just walked among us. She just walked among us.
She has a really spectacular notion of what community means. You pointed this out to me early on when we were preparing for this interview, Ellen, that she's really someone who pays it forward, who gives back, who mentors others, who has humility in the face of her own ability to convene.
And listeners, an apology. Normally I record in this wonderful studio in Providence with expert producers, but the Carrie Mae Weems conversation for me meant being in France with COVID, recording on my phone. So I'm asking you to throw up me a little clemency for this one.
And with that was beautiful, Jessica. Let's jump in. And here is our conversation with the Carrie Mae Weems. if there was anything that I've learned about you over the years, but particularly over the weekend when I lived in the space that you created for 48 hours, was how extraordinary you are at bearing witness to the condition of others, to the pain of the world, and your really almost ineffable ability to hold space for other creative people. It was someone on stage, I'm looking at my notes here, acknowledged you for your artistic practice and how inspiring that's been, but very specifically your practice of convening, particularly as it cues generosity and generativity. And I was astonished that to live there and to miss you, Carrie, when I was gone, and to miss that feeling of feeling safe. I'm a Brown alum. I'm not used to feeling safe at Brown. And I just wanted to start by acknowledging that it must take a lot out of you.
Well, you get what you give.
See? Yeah.
You get what you get.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think that you're giving and you're just receiving. And so I have this, I somehow early on, I developed an ability to bring people together. Don't know where it comes from. All I know is that it's something that I'm able to do, and I do it well, and I do it actually with ease. I'm very comfortable with people. I'm very comfortable in the world, and I have a sense that people are very comfortable with me. People trust me. What a wonderful thing that I am trusted. And so it's in that space of trust that I'm able to do all of the work that I do, as judgmental as I am. People somehow still trust me to really get it right. And I think that in part, some of that trust comes from the way that I ask certain kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm.
That I ask questions, because really, we're all, every morning you get up and you're trying to figure out what you're doing on the planet. Every morning you're confronted with what you're doing on the planet, right? And what matters, what matters, and how you're actually going to make it through the day, and what you're going to do from the time you get up until the time you go to bed, what you're going to do, and what's actually going to be meaningful in the course of the day, and whether you contribute ultimately, right, to whatever it is that you care about. And I think that often people are confused about what they care about, right? So, it's like going over to the school and being in this dynamic moment where everything is so unsettled, and if you say anything positive about Palestine, it means that you're saying something negative about Israel. Well, this is not where I am. This is not where I sit. I refuse that, and yet everyone feels as though they're being forced to take sides. I think that the most courageous thing to do is to pose questions to both sides about all things, right? Because everything needs to be questioned. And so how to articulate the question then I think becomes important, and how to present it and how to make people feel at ease around it. And so I think that probably in some ways, one of the things that I've always been very interested in is sort of like the notion of conflict resolution. How do we resolve crises? How do we resolve crises? And I think, whatever that crisis is, whether it's in, sort of social political or within the artistic, right? They're all sort of the same. It's just sort of different modes of articulation, right? And so, what are the questions that artists are trying to tease out? And then how can I offer a platform for that teasing out, whether you are a writer or a visual artist or a dancer or a scientist, or a political economist or an environmentalist? I'm sort of interested in all of it because it's all interwoven and it's intersected. Right? And the most fascinating work, I think really makes use of all of it. And so my convenings have always had a very broad mix of people coming from many, many different spaces. And Brown is probably the smallest one that I've actually done. But the great thing is that I'm always fundamentally nourished by what others are doing. So I feel as though, again, I get as much as I give. And everybody I know who's there is exhausted. Everybody I know is laying down this week. So it's got to be true.
I was.
I didn't
Well, I
see
was
you there.
wondering as you were talking about discovering your ability to be trusted and discovering your passionate belief in the input of others. And these things to know about oneself are so epic. They're so huge and they're so fundamental to the work you make, the voice you have, the impact you've had in the world. Were there moments when you were coming of age as a young artist? Were there people who gave you opportunities? Were there institutions that didn't give you opportunities that made you realize, look deeply in yourself? Can you pinpoint moments when, or people who made you see things in yourself that you now see in others?
My father.
How beautiful.
I'm so lucky. My father. From a very young age. I think it's, and as I've grown through the years, it's the one constant. It's the one thing that is constant. This great, his extraordinary ability to gift his children with the notion that they had the right to be any and everywhere in the world, and that there was no one bitter, or rather bigger or better than I, and I was better than no one else, right? That we were equal. And having that from as early as I can remember, having that instilled, I think has been very, 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 very important. And so it does sort of give me a sense of confidence in myself and in the world that has been very important. And so I'm very grateful for that. Of course, I've had other friends, other colleagues who have been important, in different ways, who introduced me to ideas, to introduce me to politics early in my life. So I was always very thirsty, always very thirsty. So I was really lucky to meet these kind of people very, very early. It's been a very interesting thing, though, as a woman sort of moving through space. There have been a few men along the way who encouraged me, But for the most part, I think when I really unpack it and I really look at it very closely, it's really been the women in my life, the women around me, who've been really the ones who have quietly supported me, Mm-hmm. And sometimes, something happens, you don't know where the support is coming from, but it's coming from somewhere, right? And if you dig deep enough, you discover there was, that woman, that woman who was the director of that institution, that woman who's the director of that institution, that person who's the director or the curator of that institution, right? And and it's still for the most part very, very, very true. Right? And so even today, when I look at the vast majority of curators who are really interested in my work, who are writing about the work, who are processing the work, and I'm going to tell you something even more interesting in a few minutes. I look at those names, 90% of them are women. 90% of them are women. Whether they're working on their PhDs, whether they're teaching in university or colleges or grade schools, they are the women who are really carrying the name of Carrie Mae Weems forward, and the idea that I might be of importance to the field. And that, I think, is very interesting. And so, as much as I love men and I like working with men, I don't think they like working with me all that much.
Yes, 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 yes. I aspire to be as
Yes.
challenging to the men in my life as Carrie Mae Weems. I do. That's an energy that will bring me forward. Thank you for that.
I mean, it's really just sort of the truth.
Yeah.
And it's and indeed, I have to say, it's with a certain sadness.
Yeah.
It's with a certain sadness, because I've supported a whole lot of people and a whole lot of men in my life, and not to really have their support in a serious way has been meaningful to me and sad to me. And I've called a few of them, some of my closest colleagues, to ask them why. Men don't know what to do with women, and men don't know what to do with women like us, for the most part. And they don't know what to do with a woman like me. They don't know how to meet my needs, and they assume in some way that I don't quite have them because I'm not asking for it. Right? And so, as opposed to making the assumption that we're all in need, and therefore you offer what you have to offer because you can offer it. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's really basic. And so, so I've had to have some talks with a few of my male colleagues in the last couple of years about this, because I think that it really does matter. On the other hand, things are changing, and women are stepping up and out in the field, I think, in new ways, and they're making their voices heard and the things that they care about heard, and so I'm a part of that mix as well, right? So it's not just about sort of resistance to change. It's also about how change is taking place and who is at the forefront of that change.
To me, it's also about longevity. I we're sort of generationally very connected here, and to have lived this long to see the kinds of things that mean real change for people. I was very moved by your conversation with Lena Waithe, and
But wasn't that lovely?
wasn't that lovely? It was like the reverence and the truth telling, which I think is part of why people trust both of you. But I loved the fact that you included images from your scenes and takes photo project when you asked the really poignant question across the generational divide: why now, and what does it feel to have been too early? She had arrived in Hollywood on a wing and a prayer, and the clock was ticking. I mean, just transfixing moment. So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about what price we pay when we are too early, and to build on your calling people and asking them, where are we supporting the people in this new moment? Who is too early right now that we need to be paying attention to, and how do we engage them?
That's really kind of a wonderful question. I'm not really sure really how to answer it, but I think it's a really wonderful question. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know the answer at the moment. But I do know that we've got a long way to go, and that in this field, that we have a long way to go, and that even while there has been this flurry of activity around Black, Brown, and women artists in the last few years, it's only been the last few years, right? Out of the hundreds of years, it's only been a couple of seconds of attention given to contemporary women and people of color in the arts. So I think that we still have a lot of work to do with mining where we are right now. And it seems to me that the thing that becomes really important, or the thing that I've always been very interested in, is how do I, as an individual, as an artist, as a practitioner, as a convener, as a thought leader, how do I simply, by my action and by the questions I raise, and by what I do, how do I broaden the field of possibility for art in general, and then for people of color in particular, and then women as well? right? That I think is always the question. And so I'm always looking, which is why I always invite younger people to participate as well, right? They always say that you need at least 3 generations at the table.
Mhm.
Right? If you can do that, then you know that you're always reaching back, even as you are reaching forward. Early this morning, at this very interesting conversation, sort of with both with myself and with an art historian, and like I can see, as I look out on the horizon, I can see change coming straight at me, and a part of the change that I see is a part of that change has to do with the way that I happen to be, how I am being written into history. A whole set of young historians, curators, and art historians, and writers, and social critics, etc., who are writing me into history. Now, this is sort of phenomenal to witness in my own time. I mean, it's really kind of remarkable, right? So I started to sort of understand, glean for myself that something transformative was happening in relationship to the idea of who Carrie Weems is and what it is that she has done in the field and what it means to a generation of practitioners. And so this morning when I opened an email and 2 women had written me about investigating and doing major projects around my early work, 2 women, 2 different fields, right? But doing work around my early projects, I thought, that is what it is. I am actually being written at this very moment into the historical document as an artist. And this is just sort of amazing. And I don't know, I don't know. It's just kind of, and I say this really with great surprise. This is not like something that I wanted. It's not something that I ever thought about. It's not something that I've encouraged. It's simply something that I am observing. Something that I'm observing.
I'm here with Kwesi Mitchell, Deloitte's Chief Purpose and DEI Officer, and good friend and sponsor of today's episode. Good to see you, Kwesi. Thank you for joining us.
It's good to be here, Ellen.
So I want to talk about the individual. Employees are often looking to leaders to fix the big systems and address systemic biases. But you've got upcoming research that says that every individual within an organization can make a difference. I want to believe. Can you tell us more?
I am a firm believer, if it makes you feel better, Ellen. And our research, and the specific piece is titled The Power of I in Equity. And it's really driving the notion that we all play an individual part, in addressing DEI and driving change within our organizations. And in fact, our research shows that almost 76% of employees agree that everyone should play a role in advancing equity. However, where you have a breakdown is 79% of senior leaders believe that they have a role, whereas only 56% of staff believe that they have a role. And that substantial gap that exists there is what we fundamentally need to address to drive better and more equitable outcomes within the workforce.
So we've learned that inclusion belongs to everybody, regardless of where you are in an organization or even just not in an organization, just walking through the world as a person who cares about others. If people go to the DEI Institute website, what are they going to find there?
They're going to find leading research that really boils down some of these really complex challenges into actionable, tactical steps that leaders can take on a daily basis to transform their workforce. So what you'll see is thoughtful research that puts you into a position of acting rather than observing and sitting on the sidelines, because we need everyone to act.
Always great to hear concrete ways we can move forward. Thank you for your time, Kwesi.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ellen. It's been a pleasure.
When you talk about the field, I look at the incredible, prodigious output of, in many different dimensions of the field. When you began as a photographer taking photographs, were you already thinking about dance and film and sculpture and installation and environment and space, and imagining this sort of expansiveness? And as you did, because the second question is, do you think that working in those many kaleidoscopic dimensions also becomes points of entry for all the contributors and all the collaborators and all the voices that you give access to? It's not everybody that I mean, I think that's such an incredible, for me, it was like initially the bravery of being able to work in so many dimensions is really perhaps the big question.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I do know that, for instance, the cyclorama itself is a form. It's an arena. It's an arena.
Mm.
So it's a container for the containment of certain kinds of ideas, and it can carry with it then performance and music and theater. It has the potential as a structure to carry all of these disciplines along with it, which I think is really sort of wonderful and something that I've been interested in for a very long time. I've been interested in notions of circus and performance for years and years and years and years and years. And so my cyclorama is really a way of dealing with or containing this idea about the circus, starting with the circus of politics and the politics of circus, using that as a kind of metaphor for dealing with lots of different ideas in the same way that you would across like a circus performance. I had already been involved a little bit with theater. I'd already been involved with dance when I came to photography. So I'd already done those things, but I didn't understand really, what choreography was. I mean, I didn't really understand it as a discipline. So I understood it as a dancer, but I didn't understand it as a choreographer. And I think that probably had I understood choreography really as a field, maybe I would have stayed much longer in dance, right? But those were sort of forms, like I'm sort of like I'm a natural mover. I'm a natural dancer. So dance wasn't necessarily challenging. It was something that I just sort of did naturally. And so people would ask me to participate. I'm a character. So people would ask me to perform, though I was never really interested in acting, right? I think I've always been interested in things that were slightly quieter. I was always more interested in the visual. I was more interested in painting. I was more interested in poetry, something that was smaller, that was a little bit more solitary. I seem to be like an extraordinary, like extrovert, but I really require an enormous amount of solitude. It takes an enormous amount of solitude to really think about a number of other artists and how to bring them forward.
The most delicious answer. And so there's so much in there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was really generous of you to answer all of my questions in one beautiful question. Ellen.
In the time we have remaining, I know that you've got so much on your plate. I wanted to attempt to thread the needle between trusting you, the way you show up, and you're now essential component in the historical record through your work, because it's not just practitioners who need you or who are understanding you. It is the world. We need the world to understand this work. And there's two things I wanted to share with you. One, I wanted to flag The Usual Suspects, which is an extraordinary exhibit of the photographs, the young men wearing hoodies and their police records, destroyed, murdered by police violence. As a longtime business journalist, which is I'm going to say, it's going to sound like hilarious to your ears. For the last 7 years, I've focused on the intersection of race, equity, leadership, and business life. And that has been a strange and lonely beat. And one of the things I did for my audience who desperately need this information was watch every single police shooting so they didn't have to, so that my reporter's voice could tell them, this is valid, you should be upset, here are the components, don't watch. I did. It will leave a mark, right? I mean, it will leave a mark. But I see The Usual Suspects. And what do I see? I see you giving a way for us to engage as viewers together with this material, which are human lives, in a way that feels emotionally sustainable and in fact nourishes us, to use your word. I mean, it was just an extraordinary thing for me to be there. The other one was the other experience I had was in the cyclorama. Every single Black or African American visitor who walked in while I was there, I went through a couple of cycles, lay down. We didn't even realize that we were doing it. We went from sitting, we went from reclining, then we lay down, and then it was just, I just moved away from the microphone, sorry. And then suddenly, we were in the experience of going through with the courage where you were taking us. And the white or non-Black or African American visits didn't lie down. And I feel like there is something there about the way you have shown up over a number of years. You're so candid about your life. You're so candid about your experiences. You're very funny. Your virgin birth, I just learned about that this weekend. But really extraordinary stuff that over time has given us access to the way that you think and the way you want us to look at the world and exist with each other, and gather courage and energy from that. And I think that the fact that you're being woven into the historical record in a variety of entry points is so essential to maintaining that energy and momentum wherever we can grab it, wherever we can find it. It's really important. That was more of like a soliloquy, so I apologize for that, Carrie. But I just wanted to make sure that you got a sense.
That is so and powerful to hear. I mean, I just. I think that what I really tried to do through this work is to provide a space, a space of habitation, a space of consideration, a space of beauty and humor and peace and comfort. Of asking very, very, very difficult questions in a way that don't sound so difficult, that actually sound very warm. I think that tone is everything. Tone is everything. You can say anything you want in the world, and it can be heard, I think, often if we say it and we use the right tone. And so how something is made aesthetically, I spend an enormous amount of time thinking about what something looks like, what something sounds like. How do I open space? How do I open space for me, for all of that I'm feeling, and know that I can bring an audience with me because they're feeling exactly the same thing, that they need exactly the same thing that I need, right? So I'm making the work first and foremost for me, and then it becomes the gift, if you will, the sharing that I can offer to my audience, offering it in a way that allows them to step into the work and to see themselves reflected back without it necessarily being representational. Right? And it's not simply made for women, and it's not simply made for Black people. It's made for people who are interested in having the conversation. People that are interested in being challenged, who are seeking, who are curious, who are asking questions, so that it has a great deal of compassion and charity loaded and located, I think, in the work. And that, I think, is the thing that allows people to negotiate these very difficult subjects and very difficult terrain that's embodied in the work. And so these ideas about design, what you're designing, what you're putting in the world, what you're building and shaping and constructing for the world to inhabit along with you, is the house. That's the roof. It's the container. And it's the protection It allows you to stand in the conditions and not be ruined. So, yeah, to stand in the conditions and not be ruined. And that is indeed the challenge of the work. Because looking at, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of murders and still be able to get up in the morning and walk out of your house and love your family and say hello to the world is a challenge. That's not easy to do. When we're working on these kinds of projects in my studio, sometimes we have to leave the studio early, right? You're trying to aestheticize, the murder of, Don McDonald being shot on the streets of Chicago, right? We're trying to edit this, trying to create a rhythm, right? So that we can have so we can carry our audience. Well, this is complicated material, painful, horrible material that, that you witness, that we witnessed, and that we then, bring forth into the world. So it is a challenge by all means and all measure. But the thing that is resounding is that of hope. That you only do it because you are hoping that something can be better. That you're hoping that something can be better. That you're hoping that if I do this, if I make this action, that maybe I can change the outcome of that. What a glorious thing, right? That's the thing that keeps you going. That's the thing that says, I can do this work. Right? I can cry, I can be angry, I can be upset, but at the end of the day, I know that I am doing this work because something has to change. So, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Truly, for all the time and the thoughtfulness and your compassion about all things great and small. Truly, an honor.
Peace and love.
Peace and love to you, my friend Jessica.
Peace and love back to you, Ellen.
That was a conversation.
One of the incredible things about talking to people for a long time, like we did, this was a long conversation, was where we started wasn't where we ended.
Right. She's and I'm so particularly taken with the fact that the dimensions of her practice let her just slide seemingly effortlessly from, she calls herself a visual artist, but make no mistake, this is a dynamic, historically accurate, culturally relevant, just, I think, a multifaceted way of meeting the world.
Oh my God, absolutely. And I think because she is so effortless, because it feels so seamless, it masks the extraordinary amount of work that she does to prepare and the extraordinary amount of work that she has done over that time, through the barriers, through the difficulties, while being rejected, while having to constantly sell and market the themes of what you're doing, which are uncomfortable for the audience anyway, to turn herself into the kind of artist that is working at the level that she is. She really is incredible.
And you look at the work and you know that this is not, I mean, it's visionary, it's skillful, it's consistently highest of high level in terms of the output and the insights, but it demands the participation and coordination of people besides herself, which comes back to how to be that person, how to have that vision, and how to wrestle to the ground your ideas, but work with others, play with others, get along with others in a field that hasn't always been so hospitable to people that look like her, sound like her, think about the things she's thinking about.
It's the ultimate stakeholder approach. You're absolutely right. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. It's the ultimate redesign approach. Many of her exhibits were at the campus as part of her residency there. But the cyclorama was extraordinary for several reasons. One, you are literally walking into a circular room surrounded by screens with extraordinary jumbo size images of people, not all Black people, but people in various stages of reacting to what's around them. It completely envelops you. And to your point, Jessica, it requires you as a viewer to drop everything you're doing and thinking and just let the images wash over and the music wash over you.
It didn't occur to me till this moment, because you told me when you saw it about the laying down. And in hindsight, I'm reminded of other work she's done where she thinks about place, and she thinks about the home, she thinks about the living room. The exhibit where I saw Cyclorama in France, she had some of these mini installations from previous work she'd done as part of the larger exhibition. And I think she doesn't tell you to lie down. And it's interesting that you're pointing out that only the African American participants were lying down, but the idea that you would actually think about your viewer in terms of sight and comfort and gait, G-A-I-T, gait, and choreography.
You've hit it exactly right. You're in the cyclorama, this circular theater in the round, and the film that is being played is called The Shape of Things, which she completed in 2021. And it's both newly shot and found footage of Black violence and resistance and historical events. It is the perfect film for perfect artistic experience for the moment that we find ourselves in. You hear her voice as a narrator. So again, you're in a world that she created. It's 40 minutes long, and there are some really challenging images, and there's some challenging themes. We are compelled to look at Black bodies, at Black people. We're compelled to look at people. But the effect was every single Black or African American person who went in and was experiencing it stayed the entire time, which is asking a lot in a modern age, and ultimately found themselves just sort of lying down. There was just, and I don't know what it meant that I did that. I noticed it because I did that. And I can't tell you whether it was exhaustion or overwhelm or the beauty of it, or just the surrender.
Oh, that's such a beautiful idea that one would surrender before a work of art in that way, where you would stop for a moment, forget all those meditation tapes. Just go look at Carrie Mae Weems' work and stand there for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It's good for what ails you. Seriously.
Yeah.
I'm actually serious. I just want to add that I saw this in a completely different moment, in a different country, in the middle of the week. We were the only people in the exhibit. And I was struck with something very different, which was, well, just the power and the poignancy of something that was so immersive, which you, Ellen, point out, which is something about theater in the round, the cyclorama, the title of it, the arced wall, certainly the scale of the images. But what dawned on me, and I say this from the perspective of someone who has logged a lot of hours in the studio, how hard it is for any artist at any point to make something that is both timely and timeless. And that's what struck me, was that you could walk in, you could walk out, you could stay 40 minutes, you could see it in France in an empty room, or you could see it in Providence. And this thing is going to resonate, and it's going to resonate wherever she does it for, I hope, many, many years to come.
I hope so too. And we spend a lot of time, in cultural circles talking about lenses, the gender lens, the white lens, the Black lens. This is clearly a lens of Blackness, and I don't think that I would have been able to describe it or think about it without having experienced it. And she has really mastered it. And she's been a master the entirety of her career. But this felt like a pinnacle moment. Timeless and timely. Beautiful.
So, Ellen, my dear, speaking of redesigning, I hear DBBD has a new segment this season.
Yes, we do. It's called Big Swings and Small Wins.
Okay, tell me more about this phrase. I've been hearing you say it all over our digital newsroom over the last few months. And I love me a good Ellenism. This was coming up in your conversation. We wanted to do something special for our listeners at the end of each episode, and this is it.
Yeah, just to our last conversation and talking about all the challenges in the world, it's pretty clear that 2024 is going to be really challenging, and that for all the reasons you're talking about war and political division and misinformation. Climate change is terrifying. Like, all of it is terrifying. The full-on attack on ideas and inclusion. So I was looking for a survival strategy for myself, of course, but also for us at Design Observer. How do we think about the world? Where are we useful? What's important? Where can we weigh in? And so big swings and small wins just felt like a good operating principle, a good organizing principle. Big swings require you to take risks, to make room for yourself in this frantic world, speak a little louder, take a little more space, dream big. They're supposed to be scary. But I'm reclaiming the term from, tech bros and marketing gurus. For it to work, I think particularly this year, it has to be linked to a broader purpose. Joyful, bring people along and speaks to what the world really needs now. And because they're really hard and often hard to achieve, and you have to pivot a lot and you have to get very comfortable with failure, small wins. Collect the things that matter to you in the moment, no matter how small they are. Refer to them often. There's the tiny signs that good things are happening, tiny signs that you're on the right track and that you deserve to be where you are. These little breadcrumbs, I live for them. And if you have enough of them, they're a trailing indicator that you're on the right track. So that's what we're doing this year.
You are the most beautiful of cockeyed optimists. And I just want to say that I just had a little moment, light bulb moment, that we need to have a new podcast called Getting Comfortable with Failure.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Because
Yes,
we do
yes.
in an age of uncertainty.
We do.
So with no further ado, let's get into it. Big swing, small wins. What do we have for this week?
So our big swing, by popular vote of you, me, and Alexis Hott, our producer, is the redesign of Brown and Providence.
I love it. I love it.
It's a wonderful city. It was lost to the ages for a long time, and it is a far different place now.
So tell us what Providence was like when you were a student at Brown.
You know, if you can have a Rust Belt city on the East Coast, I know that's typically a Midwestern thing. You know, Providence was just barely a blip on the road between New York and Boston. The industry that it was known for, the jewelry industry, was still chugging along, but sort of in decline. The city itself was gray, even on a sunny day. And there just was two wonderful institutions sort of anchoring it, Brown and Rhode Island School of Design. It just felt like a failing city. And there was no relationship between these institutions and the community at large, which was really a shame. And the institutions themselves, I can only speak for Brown, felt like they had never made it past the civil rights and the gender rights movements of the 60s and 70s, and were just sort of stuck. And it is not that way now. And it's one of my favorite cities. It was a city that I lived there after college. I started in business there. I had real relationships. I'm always rooting for it. And you moved there. That's a good sign.
I did. I want to say, I mean, colleges and universities, particularly now, it's a very difficult moment for the intellectual and cultural elite. I was on the phone the other day with, I'm on a board, and one of my fellow board members is Valerie Smith, who's the president of Swarthmore. And she said recently that a friend had said to her that she was the smartest president in America. And I said, well, you are smart, Val, but why? And she said, because I'm on sabbatical this term. And, we're all under fire, right? Cities are under fire. Town gown relationships. I came from New Haven, where Yale had not played this particularly well. Brown's done something, RISD's done something, Providence has done something special. And to come back to, you were flagging this, thank you, for our season 9 interview with Avery Willis Hoffman. This was an exciting moment for us. You and I were interviewing her. She had come from the Armory in New York, where she had been the director. She came to Brown. They gave her a budget. She had a vision. They built this beautiful theatrical center. And I just a few weeks ago went to see a William Kentridge play there, and she introduced the play. Kentridge was there at the end. It felt like something had come full circle. I think Brown is doing this in a beautiful way, in an important way. And to come back to redesign and the community of followers that, Ellen, you bring from Race Ahead days, from all the work you've done all these years, I think what Brown's done that's really smart is they've really included everybody. They've included different points of view. They've included artists and academics and participants and politicians. A friend of mine is here for a few months shooting a movie and is having, I think, a really great experience coming from LA during and after the strike, because it has become actually a welcoming place for people of all stripes to come and do their work and do their best work.
And I don't want to give Brown the only credit for the redesign of Providence. There were tremendous inputs, the people, the business community, the political community, which is strange. That's another podcast, but amazing, long history. Buddy Cianci, I will always miss you. Strange, wonderful man. But oh my goodness. But the transformation of the city is just something to behold. It is a small coastal town with an extraordinary history, and I just am so happy to see it shine. And I'm so happy that you live there. And I know we got to go, but I am going to take the small win for this episode. And this small win that I would like to nominate is my darling friend and partner, Jessica Helfand, who has had 7 amazing acts as a professional, as an artist, and as a designer. And now, after a long period of striving and very hard work, she's turned herself into a working painter. please head over to jessicahelfand.com and see what she's working on. It's extraordinary. And Jessica, I am so very proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see that coming. I didn't expect it. And I've never been happier doing this podcast with you. But also, the minute this is over, I go back to the world of linseed oil and fumes. It's an exciting thing at my advanced age to have a new career. And I couldn't be happier. Thank you. That's very generous. Thank you.
Well done. Small wins. Sometimes they're all you get. All right. So that's all for today. We're going to see you back here in 2 weeks with another redesigner who is transforming their community, their field, and our world.
In the meantime, for more conversations like these, keep up with Design Observer on our Observed column. Really, it is just the gift that keeps on giving. It's a rich repository of all things design. You can find it right on our homepage at designobserver.com. You can also find a link to the Avery Willis Hoffman interview we did in season 9, along with every episode from seasons 1 through 10 of DBBD.
See you next time. The Design of Business, the Business of Design is a podcast from Design Observer.
Our show is written and produced by Alexis Haught. Our theme music is by Warner Meadows. Justin D. Wright of Seaplane Armada mixed and mastered this episode. Thanks to Adina Karp, our new friends at Focus Forward Podcast Studio in Providence. And Ellen, you got anybody to thank?
I can't think of anything. Oh my God. My poor brain.
Okay, then.
I can't think of anything. And for more long-form content about the people redesigning our world, please consider subscribing to our newsletters, Equity Observer and The Observatory. The Design of Business, the Business of Design is produced by Design Observer's editorial team. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte or its personnel, nor does Deloitte advocate or endorse any individuals or entities featured on the podcasts.